My name is Molly. I'm a pastry chef. My husband Andy and I got married 3 years ago. His family is very famous. They run a group of restaurants that everyone knows. They mainly deal with seasonings which I use daily. I first learned about them when I went to visit my parents-in-law's house for the first time. I was hesitant to marry into such a respectful family. After all, my husband is the eldest son of the family and has been nominated to be the head of the family. In other words, I will be the wife of the head of the family. Perhaps my anxiety was showing, but my husband said to me, "Don't worry, I will protect you no matter what." He said that and held my hand tightly. However, my mother-in-law seemed to have a very different personality from my husband. Raised by my father, I was a disgrace to the family. With my family background status below her own, I was an insignificant person who deserved to be ignored. Even if you have a son, he won't be the next heir. That's what she told me as soon as we met. The first meeting was the worst. But I didn't see my mother-in-law that much, so I've only had a few instances of what you might call marriage bullying. But the turning point came. My cake was chosen for the menu of a restaurant owned by my father-in-law. My mother-in-law was very proud of her cake, but it didn't make it past the first round of review. "I don't care since I didn't put my full effort into it." She said so even though I didn't say anything. I wonder if she thinks she could actually beat me, a pastry chef, if she really tried. But after that, she must have felt very bad about losing to a simple parent woman. Her bullying escalated. She used to visit our house only once a month, but she started visit us frequently and began to make sarcasms and petty complaints. "Molly, there's a hair on the floor. I wonder what kind of discipline you received to be satisfied with this kind of cleaning. I like to see your parents' faces." My mother-in-law started looking for something wrong as soon as she arrived and pointed out loudly, "I did that. If you want to complain, just tell me." My husband responded with a disgusted look on his face. My husband works from home and has been taking the initiative in doing the housework himself because he has time to spare. "Mom, if you look in the mirror, you'll see his parents' face." I wanted to tell her that. "Molly, did you force your husband to do the housework again? I can't believe you put work first and neglect the housework. I didn't cut corners at all, either at work or at home." She would change the subject and attack me. Even when my husband tried to stop her, she would yell until I apologized. I had no choice but to bow to her, and she would smile with satisfaction and walk away. My husband always sighed at my mother-in-law's attitude. "I'm sorry. It's because I put work first." "No, I'm sorry. I'm not reliable. I did think about telling this to her." My husband tried to warn her every time, but my mother-in-law wouldn't listen to him. Probably the only person my mother-in-law listens to is my father-in-law. Well, I just have to put up with my mother-in-law's back sarcasm. If you just let it slide, it will go away in time. But I will soon learn that such naive thinking would not work with my mother-in-law. I never imagined that she would do something like that. It was June. A birthday party was being held through my husband's cousin. A big celebration was planned. To my surprise, they were going to invite people from work besides the relatives. The party was to be held in the hall of a luxury hotel that could accommodate about 100 people. Well, from my husband's family, this is probably not a big deal. Besides, I hear that his cousin is quite beautiful. There must be quite a few men who would like to get close to her on this occasion. A few days after my husband informed me of this, I received a call from my mother-in-law. The main dish is to be made by the family. Decide who will make what. I see. So here's my suggestion, Molly. You're a pastry chef, so you must be good at cooking. That thing we had before, it was delicious. So why don't you cook that main dish? We'll pay for it, so you don't have to worry about the money. The way my mother said it sounded sarcastic, but it's true that I'm good at cooking in general. Well, the best is cakes. And my mother-in-law has never criticized me for cooking. It's the only genre that my mother-in-law never complains about. You know how to bake, so do it right, alright? I won't forgive you if there's any mistake. Before I could respond, my mother-in-law concluded on her own and hung up the phone. I gave up and adjusted my work schedule until the day of the party and started preparing for the cake and the pastry food. Everything went smoothly until the day of the celebration. My mother-in-law must have thought it was very important because she didn't bother me at this time, but I now realize that it was just the silence before the storm. On the day of the birthday party, I received a call from my mother-in-law. The time was 10:30 in the morning. The party starts at 12, so my mother-in-law, who is in charge of the event, must be busy making a final confirmation of the venue. I wondered what she wanted, but ignoring the call was too much trouble, so I decided to answer the phone. Oh, Molly, I checked the food. I can't believe you're going to serve that trash. I'm sorry, but I threw it all away. I couldn't understand what was going on, so I just replied with an indifferent, "Oh, I see." Excuse me, I'm at work right now. I was in the middle of rushing to get some urgent work done in time for the celebration. I didn't have time to listen to my mother-in-law's nonsense. I told you I threw away all your food. We don't have time. We are starting at 12. Get on and cook it over. I don't understand. Could it be that my mother-in-law doesn't know that I switched my responsibilities today? Yes, I had family members take my responsibility except the cake in order to take care of an urgent request. My cake was scheduled to be delivered an hour before the event started, so the cake at the venue, at least, was not prepared by me. Of course, my mother-in-law doesn't know that. So, to harass me, she threw away all the dishes and is trying to make me make them over again. There's no way a big cake can be made in few hours to begin with. I guess she wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone. I had no choice but to tell her everything, because if I didn't, it would cause a lot of trouble for my husband's relatives. Mother, please listen to me carefully. I'm in the kitchen. I've been here since this morning. I've been baking a cake to fill an urgent order. That's why I'm not in charge of the main dishes. The main cake was to be delivered later. I said slowly and gently, as if I was talking to a child. You are lying. How could that be? Finally, realizing what was happening, my mother-in-law began to panic. What are you going to do? We don't have much time left before we start. You have to do something. It's your fault for not telling me, or else I'm going to say that you threw it away. My mother-in-law is talking crazy things, but it will ruin my reputation as a pastry chef if she blurted out that I threw away the food. I had no choice but to leave the urgent work to my staff and rush to the venue. But there was a traffic jam, and it was a little after 11 o'clock when I arrived at the venue. I had called my husband and explained the situation to him, so when he saw me, he came rushing up to me with a pale face. Apparently, the food didn't make it in time. The food was in the waiting room, but the main dish was missing. So I went to the kitchen and there was a sink full of food. And then I walked in. It was like a funeral. Some people were even saying that they had no choice but to cancel the birthday party. My mother-in-law, in dire straits, said, Molly threw it away. Of course she did. As soon as she saw me, she treated me like a culprit. I could see this coming, so I had made a request to my husband. I'm sick and tired of dealing with my mother-in-law. I'm going to put an end to all this today. Molly, what have you done? You're such a terrible person for interrupting someone's celebration. She yelled at me. My husband's relatives who had heard the commotion were all around, and they all turned on me at once, believing what she said. But I didn't throw away the food. I corrected. My mother-in-law was quick to say, Who else but you? How dare you ruin this celebration? I can only think of you, brought up by a single parent. I was at work all morning. I'm sure our staff can attest to it. And you, mother, was the one who called to me that you thrown away all the food, wasn't it? I would never say that. That's why single-parent children... I wonder what kind of education we received to put the blame on others. My mother-in-law was a tragic heroine, appealing to everyone around her that she was the victim. My mother-in-law, who had been in the family for more than 20 years, was more trusted by the relatives than me, who has only been a member of the family for a few years. I could feel the reproach focused on me even more. Well, I guess we should check the security cameras in my store. I'm sure I can prove my alibi. Then it would be clear that my mother-in-law was lying. I was determined to fight back, but I asked Molly to do my work. I went directly to Molly's workplace. The voice was my father-in-law. I asked my husband to call my father-in-law. He is a busy man, so there was a good chance he could refuse, but my father-in-law seemed to agree. My husband is relieved that he succeeded in his mission. Because of my father-in-law's words, the suspicion that had been directed at me began to focus on my mother-in-law. So, Molly, I'd like to hear more about what you said about the phone call earlier. She tasted the food, and because it was like trash, according to her, she just threw everything away. She told me to make it over again. And then I started playing the audio I had secretly recorded. Now, How about this? Do you still believe in her? When I asked this question, my relatives began to apologize to me. Then I heard a voice crying out from among them. It was my cousin Sarah. In fact, Sarah was the one who took over cooking for me, in order for me to deal with the request that had come in the short notice. She graciously agreed to cook for me because I seemed to be busy. Sarah and I have always been good friends. I told her how to cook, so I trusted her with the cooking. I never thought this would happen. I can't believe she threw away the food I worked so hard on. And it was just to put blame on Molly? It's so terrible. With tears streaming down her face, she blamed my mother-in-law. Sarah was the star of the party, but she wanted to surprise everyone with her cooking, and I decided to cooperate. Hey, was Sarah's dish that bad? When I was asked to taste it, it was excellent. No, I didn't mean it that way. Don't give me that excuses, you fool. Oh! My father-in-law yelled at her, and she slumped to the floor. My mother-in-law apologized to my father-in-law, but he wouldn't listen to her. Besides, my mother-in-law has other people to apologize to. Mother, I think you need to apologize to someone else. Even if Sarah's cooking was that bad, it's terrible to throw it away. When I said that, my mother-in-law's face turned angry and she glared at me. She was a fool not to realize that rebellion is futile. I threw it away because I thought it was your food. I didn't want a single-parent woman like you cooking because I thought it was disgusting and despicable. It would be a disgrace to serve such food to everyone, so I kindly threw it away. You should be grateful. My mother-in-law was spitting and screaming at me. While astonished at what she said, it was my husband's aunt who raised her voice. Annie, a single parent is despicable, huh? You know I'm divorced. And did you forget that father was raised by a single parent? My mother-in-law was frightened by the cold look in her eyes, as if she was looking at a bug. Before she knew it, her relatives were looking at her in the same way. Oh no, you're a single parent of the highest rank. Molly is from a single parent of the lowest rank. That's why she's despicable. Just like cows, there were different ranks of single parents apparently. I didn't know that. Stop talking! Yelled by my father-in-law. My mother-in-law shivered and sat down on the cold floor of the kitchen. I heard it was a celebration, but what in the world is going on? Suddenly, a voice called out, and I turned to see a dignified old man. He is my husband's grandfather and the current head of the family. I don't know what's going on, but I can't forgive her for throwing away the food. The current head of the family stares at my mother-in-law. It's beneath a person to disrespect food. When I was a child, I was often told to respect food. Just as there is a salt in every grain of rice, there is a salt in every dish. Not only of the food itself, but also of the cook. In other words, you have thrown away the salt. There is no one else in my family who would be so ungrateful, is there? He asked my father-in-law. Of course not. We don't need such an ungrateful person in our family. I'm divorcing her tomorrow. Satisfied with my father-in-law's answer, the head of the family left. The word of the head of the family is absolute. There was no one here who did not understand the weight of these words, and my mother-in-law, who was so proud to be the next head of the family, understood more than anyone else the strength of the head of the family's authority. She must have understood that no matter what she said, it would never be overturned. She went around apologizing to all the relatives for the fact that she ruined the celebration, and for throwing away the dish while her family was involved in the restaurant business. Apparently, some of the relatives also had been victims by my mother-in-law's sarcasms, and they shouted at her for abuse. Well. As for the division of property, they agreed to provide a small amount of money for her. Mother-in-law was evicted from the house and had to live in the shabby apartment. Now she works part-time, and her boss, who is younger than her, gets mad at her every day. And now that I'm free from the stress of my mother-in-law, my work is going very well, and several of my cakes are now on the menu of my father-in-law's restaurant. They were so delicious that I ate too many and gained weight, my father-in-law said, smacking his glowing belly and laughing. A few months later, my belly got as big as my father-in-law. I didn't overeat. I was pregnant. I want to keep this happiness for the sake of my future child and my husband. With this vow, I continued to bake cakes to bring smiles to the faces of my customers.